On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, Big Sarge, this defense is built to last. Stingley, Petrie, Kamari, they got all the tools to make this a Super Bowl winning team.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Battle Red Nation. We are your credential media members and Texans football analyst John Hickman, Brian Big Sarge Bearfield. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, for being a part of the Locked On podcast and the Locked On Texans family, your team every day. On today's episode, we take a look towards the future. How can this roster get better? How can this team, coaching staff, front office, how can it all just become better to really be a Super Bowl contending team? Positive takeaways from the offensive side of the ball. I think Houston did some good things that they could absolutely build on. And we open up today's episode just looking at the Texans defense, why they are built to last, and why they have the young pieces that could really change the dynamic of this league. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Big Sarge,
what's going on?
I just think it's incredibly irresponsible. I don't know how many big words I can come up with, but just not having Kamari Lassiter on the all-rookie team is just insane to me. And I know it is for you, but
make sure you say it right, though. It's the Pro Football Writers Association.
I don't care what list it is. Shout out to Kalen Bullock. He made that list.
Yeah.
They picked Cooper DeJean and Quentin Mitchell.
Dennis Senior made that all NFL first team for Pro Football Writers Association.
And then what did he do after that? He made the all pro list. So I just look at it. I don't know if people are not watching Kamari Lassiter as much as we are here in Houston. We cover this team, but there's no way in hell Cooper DeJean played better or has more of an impact to the defensive side of the ball than the Kamari Lassiter. I just want to start that year off. Start the show off with that.
With that being said, right? Because I don't think that Cooper DeJean did anything more outstanding than what Kamari Lassiter did. So, when you look at it that way, when you look at it and you say what's going on, I mean, and rightfully so, the Philadelphia Eagles are, in the NFC Championship game. They could be potentially headed to another Super Bowl run. I mean, they can potentially be headed to another Super Bowl. So, I mean, you got to look at that. Some of that plays a factor into it as well. How good is your team? How good did your team do? There's no stats out there that says that Cooper DeJean is better than Kamari Lassiter. No way, no how, John. So I don't see how that happened, especially with this, John. Let me sit up in my chair. Let me say this. Especially when you have a first ballot Hall of Famer who plays the game, who refuses to throw at you all game. I don't know if people really realize this or not, but go back and look at the amount of targets and receptions that was that the Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers had when they lined up against Kamari Lassiter. Don't worry, I'll wait. What about against Derek Stingley? Don't worry, I will wait. John, Stingley was targeted 3 times. He gave up 1 catch for 12 yards. I don't even know if Kamari Lassiter was even targeted. And if you go back and you look at that, John, that may be if he was targeted, it was maybe 1 or 2 times. I can't remember right now. But I do remember what he did in the Chargers game. I do remember him when the lights were the brightest, what he did. John, there's time this year where Kamari Lassiter has been targeted 5 times or less. As a rookie, John, as a rookie, that's the ultimate sign of respect. Because when you have an all-pro on one side and Derek Stingley, okay, he's pretty much going to shut down an entire side of a field. John, and it has been a very long time, since we've seen somebody be able to do that. It's been a very long time since we've seen somebody be able to shut down an entire side of a field. And that's what Derek Stingley does. you can just forget about throwing over to whatever side he's on, right? Now, you would think that with a rookie on the other side, you would say to yourself, well, if I can't pick on Derek Stingley, I'm just going to go pick on the rookie over here. And when you go over there, it's almost like throwing at the second coming of the guy over here. So, John, when I look at it, and when I look at this Houston Texans defensive backfield as a whole, once they add another safety, because they're going to need a safety to go with we're not going to even talk about Kalen Bullock right now, but you add another safety with Kalen Bullock, to go along with what he's able to bring. You getting Jalen Petrie back, who thrived at that nickel corner position, adding that. If he would have been in the last couple of games, John, I think that you would have seen matter of fact, I think if he would have been able to play in the Baltimore Ravens game where they lost 31-2, I think it would have been different, because now you have another tackler on the field, somebody who's not afraid to tackle, but can also cover. And so you have him against the Kansas City Chiefs, Jalen Petrie. Now you have somebody who's going to body up a Travis Kelce, not going up against Travis Kelce doesn't have an advantage going up against a Miles Bryant. And so once they do all of that, with the two cornerbacks that they have, John, I got an opportunity to speak with Texans defensive back coach Dino Vasso on Monday. Yes, it was Monday. And the way that he talked about Kamari Lassiter, he said, I knew who he was in OTAs. He said, if you remember, we slotted him to start from day one. But what I see in OTAs and what he was able to do, and he only built off of that. The only thing that I had to do was to help him hone in on his God-given talent. When I asked Kamari Lassiter in the locker room during the exit interviews on Monday, how does it feel? How does it feel to know that quarterbacks stop throwing at you late in the season, targeting you late in the season? He said, I feel like once I locked in, the game got slower. He said, I'm not saying I wasn't locked in from the beginning. He said, but as time went on and I start to lock in more and more, it's like the game slowed down.
I like the defensive conversation we're having, because you just mentioned the backfield for the Houston Texans defense. Shout out to Dino Vasso again. I don't know how long they're going to be able to keep him on this coaching staff. Another underrated part of this defensive side of the ball, when we look at how they're built to last, it seems like whoever they plug in at the IDL spot, the D tackle spot, they're going to be productive, right? But you mentioned Kamari Lassiter, of course. Derek Stingley his name come up. Kalen Bullock as a rookie, he's going to get better, but he had a good rookie year. Will Anderson is really, he's going to make a lot of people's jobs around him easier.
Yeah.
The way he rushes the quarterback reminds me of Myles Garrett. I don't think he didn't come into the league as fluid of a pass rusher as Myles Garrett, but where he is right now, it reminds me a lot of Myles Garrett. That motor just doesn't stop. And when you look at the greater defenses in the NFL, Derek Stingley is going to get paid soon. We was just looking at that before this show started. The highest paid cornerback right now is Jalen Ramsey at 21.1, I believe.
24.1.
24.1.
Yeah. 3 years, $72.1 million contract.
Stingley is for sure going to break that 26, 27. So they're going to have to wrap him up. But then you got guys like a Jalen Petrie who's going to come back on I think more of a team-friendly deal, all things considered. You already have two rookies in place on rookie contracts that in that defensive backfield you can trust and lean on, and those guys are only going to get better as time goes by. I think the driving force of this defense will be Will Anderson, because you got Stingley on one side, you got Kamari on the other side. There's a lot of space in between. What Will Anderson does right next to three other guys and the linebackers, who at times will be, they may walk up to the line of scrimmage, he's going to make everybody's job around him easier. The IQ he has for the game is off the charts. How he plays the edge rush position. Sarge, you brought this up a long time ago before we move on. You don't see a lot of undisciplined errors from Will Anderson.
Yeah.
He contains well, right?
Yep.
And the conversation we had was with JJ. JJ will cheat in sometime to
Yeah.
get the sack, and then to leave the edge wide open. And so you may see a play out on the edge made because nobody was there. You don't get that a lot from Will Anderson.
Yeah.
You also don't get the fact that because he's right there, I feel like any D tackle you put there will be successful in a D'Amico Ryan's defense because of what they're asking for him and how they train those guys up. And so defensively, Houston's defense gives this team, I think, an extended window of success to possibly go get that championship, which we saw that this year. How many games we can go back to and say, man, defensively, they kept you guys into the game. They kept you guys into the game. The last game we're going to see from the Houston Texans for a while, defensively, they kept them in the game. And once we get to the offensive side of the ball, being able to do what they need to do their part, you're going to get a true championship contending team. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the offensive side of the ball, positive takeaways from this season that the Houston Texans should absolutely build off of. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. $5 to get you a $295 come up. Come on, guys. Make it happen. Make it happen. Be smart about it. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com to get started with $300 in bonus bets. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL.
Welcome back, Locked On Texans fans. John, before we move on to talking about the offensive side of the ball, one thing that I want to bring from our last segment into this segment was we talked about Will Anderson Jr., right?
Talked about him.
We talked about Will Anderson Jr. I think that Will Anderson Jr. is a combination of J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney. If you could have combined both of those players into one, you would get Will Anderson
because
Jr.
Jadeveon was excellent against the run, man.
Yeah, and you could drop him in coverage. You could drop Will into coverage sometimes. Some not all the time, but they didn't drop Jadeveon in the coverage all the time. But he is somebody who can cover out of the back. I mean, cover in space. You put him in a space. You're not really trying to get him manned up on anybody. You're not trying to man him up on the tight end. You're not trying to man him up on the running back. But if you're gonna run some type of zone, some type of blitz, you can blitz a linebacker and drop him into the zone where the linebacker was going to be.
And he'll make a play. I also want to add to that defensive conversation because of their foundations, Kamari, Stingley, Bullock, Will. I'm going to add Jalen Petrie into that mix, Christian Harris, Henry Toto. Because of their foundation of players that the Houston Texans have drafted, that allows you to go out there and maybe find specialists in free agency to add to what's already here on this roster. Case in point, Danico Autry, inside-outside guy that you can trust on third down and get after the quarterback. Maybe in the early downs, create pressure or get after the run. Tim Settle, I mean, he's a name that added to this defense. If Houston can bring him back, that's another extension to the window of the defense being built to last. Azeez Al-Shaair, what he's brought to this team, a free agent that was able to come in and be added to the foundation of this team already. So, yeah, I really think the defense is going to be the catalyst to have this team win that Super Bowl. But on the offensive side of the ball, Sarge, there's been some positive takeaways from this year. Wasn't the season we expected, right? But at one point, Nico Collins was on record, on pace to drop 1,900 yards and 10-plus touchdowns, right? The positive takeaways from this year, in your opinion, what were the 2 or 3 that you say, you know what, if Houston can replicate this, get better at it, we need to see more of next year?
Well, John, before I give my take, because we did talk about how stout that defense is, right? And now we're on the offense side of the ball. Before I give my take, I would like to hear your take first, because you are one of the ones who starts, when you look at the offensive side of the ball, the first thing you look at is the quarterback. One thing that you harped on throughout the Texans playoff run is CJ has to be elite. CJ has to be elite. CJ has to be elite. So before I even give my take, when you look at the offensive side of the ball, could you start with CJ Stroud and tell me what are some of the positive takeaways that you got from him, and what do you think he needs to improve on?
I think the positive takeaway for me, and it was inconsistent, was CJ taking what the defense gave him. He saw a lot of cover two this year, was not the greatest against cover two this year. The times he was good against cover two, I'm going to just dump it off to maybe who's ever coming across the middle, or I'm going to make the easy play. And what we saw the last couple of games, I'm going to use my legs. And so I think processing the defense on what's there and doing what I need to do as a quarterback, what CJ needs to do as a quarterback to keep drives alive, is what I saw the growth from CJ this year, but we also didn't see enough of it consistently on consistent basis. CJ is a world-class accurate quarterback.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite attribute of his.
Yeah.
But there's times where, especially given the fact that your receiver is Nico Collins and he does a very good job of beating cover two, there's times where he wants to take those shots downfield.
Yeah.
And those opportunities are not always going to be there. I remember a couple of seasons ago when Tyreek Hill went to Minnesota and defenses started to change how they went up against Patrick Mahomes. He said, hey, I'm finally starting to read defenses better.
Yeah.
And we saw Patrick Mahomes become much more of a grounded, balanced quarterback. I mean, he's all world, of course, but understanding if I don't have what's over the top, I do have a guy that I can trust to get open, maybe on a 5 and out, right? I do have a guy that's coming across. All I have to do is give my guy an opportunity on one-on-one coverage or a zone beat and throw. And so that's what I want to see more from CJ Stroud, is just processing the defenses a little bit quicker, not forcing what's down the field, taking what the defense is giving you, and just being able to be the quarterback that can help sustain the drives.
Yeah.
We saw that at times from CJ Stroud this year in year 2 against a lot of adversity. What you want to see is coming into year 3. If it's at 40%, let's get it to 60%. Yeah. And I think he has the capability to do that.
I think that once he learned that he wasn't going to be hit as much towards later on in the season, that's when you start to see the old CJ come back. And there's a lot of pressure on him. I think that I remember when I asked him, what did CJ Stroud learn about CJ Stroud? And he basically said that you can't get comfortable.
Man, that was a good question.
Yeah, he said getting comfortable will get you got. And so with that being said,
his response to that was, his response to that was, like, didn't he say, I don't feel like I got comfortable, but he felt like he knew. What was his response to that?
John, I would have to look up the transcript. I'm gonna if you give me a second, I'll tell you exactly what he says. And I'm sorry about this. He said that man, it's a lot. I feel like I learned that one, you can't get comfortable in this league. Being comfortable will get you got. And for me, I wouldn't say that I was comfortable, but I definitely had a feeling like I knew I was going to do well. Yeah. And even that's dangerous. It's cliche, but control what you can control. Control the controllables.
I love that from CJ Stroud. Yeah. That's probably the ultimate reflection on, man, I thought what it was going to be wasn't what it was. And I got to get back to a place where I'm not comfortable. The reality check. That's what you want to hear from your star quarterback.
Yeah. And so, John, the positive takeaway, one of the positive takeaways from you was about CJ Stroud and what he can do, what he can build on coming out of this season. John, for me, right, it's easy to say, it's easy to talk about, the offensive line and some of the things that they did do well, because they didn't always look bad, right? But we could, the offensive line gets attacked a lot. The tight end position now gets attacked a lot. But we're talking about positives right now, right, John? And I could easily talk about Pro Bowl, should have been all pro if he doesn't miss 5 games, 1,000-yard receiver Nico Collins. But I'm going to talk about Joe Mixon. And one of the biggest additions that the Houston Texans made in the offseason was finally securing a good running back. Now, that's no shot at Dameon Pierce, because I think that Dameon Pierce can be a good backup. He has to learn moments
this year too.
Yeah, he has to learn the game just a little bit more. And I think that he's getting more comfortable in the scheme. Coming off his rookie season, going into his next season, there was still some imbalances when it came to him. And, rightfully so, him being in, different systems. So I look at Dameon Pierce as a good backup running back to Joe Mixon. Because if you look at his season in totality, John, there was a lot of times that there was no hole there for Joe Mixon to run through. And just his pure ability and determination and his drive and his grit to make something happen when there was nothing there, I think that helped out the Houston Texans offense a lot. Losing him, they lost him 3 games. The 3 games that they lost him, that when they really needed him, they lost him against Minnesota, Green Bay, and I forgot the other game that they lost him in. But I think that those games are totally different if you have him in the game. And so what I seen from Joe Mixon this year, still being 1,000-yard runner, still being able to do what he could do. One of the bright spots in that divisional game against the Kansas City Chiefs. John, one thing that needs to happen, and it definitely is going to happen, of course, but it has to happen if you truly, truly want to get the best out of Joe Mixon, you got to add a really good wide receiver too. Because if I'm not mistaken, he played with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, correct?
Yeah, what he said the other day, he's going to be doing some recruiting.
He said he's going to be one of the best recruiters, right? He's going to be one of the best recruiters at the Pro Bowl. But when you look at when you look at having 2 wide receivers on the field, 2 very good wide receivers on the field, and that may be, because we don't know how long Tank is going to be out, but that could be bringing back Stephon Diggs one more year until Tank is able to get healthy. Because I don't want people to write Tank Dale off just yet. Like Tank, just like what CJ said on Monday in his press conference, don't write him off. His story isn't done yet. His story is just getting started. And so you look at you put a wide receiver, a good wide receiver to complement what you have in Nico Collins. Now that opens up a lot for Joe Mixon. When you lose Stephon Diggs, when you lose Tank Dell, and now you don't know who's going to play the wide receiver 2, what the defense says is we're going to stop Nico. We're going to stop Nico. Once we stop Nico, we can focus on Joe. But if you got a wide receiver 2 out there, you still got to play it kind of honest. And I think that getting another wide receiver, a good wide receiver 2 to complement Nico is going to open up the holes for Joe Mixon, a running back who found daylight when there wasn't daylight in the running game this year.
I also want to add to that, I think if the Houston Texans hire within at that offensive line position, coach, I think Cole Popovich is up for an opportunity right now, regardless of if it's outside or inside. What Houston was able to do when they stopped zone run blocking and went to maybe that power run blocking, you got more of you got better looks for the offensive line. So, by all means, am I not saying be content with the offensive line you have right now? Absolutely not. I'm on record saying I think Houston needs 3 new starting offensive linemen. I like the depth that the Houston Texans have. You got Juice Scruggs on a rookie deal. You got Jared Patterson on a rookie deal. I don't know, Sarge, how much Houston is done with Kenyon Green, right? But you got 3 inside guys that Houston can have as depth pieces or competition at training camp next year. But at the very least, a positive takeaway from the offensive line is, hey, you know what, guys? Running this way is more suitable to your skill set. And those small creases that we were able to create with the zone scheme, we may be able to do better if we allow you guys to go heads up, body for body, and getting them out the way. Now, they absolutely still need help in the passing game. That's no doubt about that.
But real quick, John, because I don't know if the snow has, and well, not only just the snow, but just the inclement weather has affected your brain. Because one day you want to get rid of Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil. The next day you want Cole Popovich, who coached under Strasser. Now,
no, I didn't say I wanted him. I said I think he's up for an opportunity. He wouldn't be my preference. I believe Houston needs to hire outside.
So, and that's what so I just want you to clarify that because I'm like,
no.
you were in the room, you're part of, I put it like this. When you talk to defensive line coach Rod Wright, one name that he always throws up,
Nate Ollie.
Thank you.
He's in Atlanta now.
So
no. I absolutely feel like Houston should hire outside of the building. I'm saying, given to what we've known about this team so far, loyalty is a lot for Houston. And if that is the case, because we don't believe Bobby Sloak is 100% gone, we're going based off of what we know and how we feel, and if they'll bring him back. If that's the case, hey, you know what? This is more suitable to your skill talents. You're smiling. I'm gonna see why we smiling when we come back. We got more Locked On Texans podcast. Hey, Texan fans, therapy is a game changer. You got two guys on this show that heavily believe in therapy. It can help manage stress, improve sleep, communicate more effectively, but finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule can be challenging. That's where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within 48 hours, and it's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your own home, in the driveway of your car, on the phone. They make it even easier than ever to message your therapist in between appointments. Whenever you need to contact them, it's easy with Talkspace. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans, and for the most insured members, there's a $0 copay. It's never been easy to prioritize mental health. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL, into promo code SPACE80 to match with a licensed therapist today. Go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL and enter promo code SPACE80 to get $80 off your first month of your to get that $80 off your first month and show your support for the show. That's Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL, promo code SPACE80. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. A look towards the future. Sarge, is Bobby Sloak. You had that little smirk on your face. Is he going to be a part of that future? Can't comment. You can't comment now. Okay, let's see if I can get it. Can we get it?
Hey, wait, John. Wait, John.
Yes, if a frown, no. What we doing?
John, do you remember when I think it was on what was the documentary? What was the documentary that they did about the Chicago Bulls championship run? The last dance or something?
Yeah.
You remember when was it Magic Johnson on there when he was talking about, man, I came out and yeah.
No, was that the Olympic?
Yeah, he was talking about the Olympics. Yeah. Well, maybe that was the Olympic. Maybe that's a Dream Team documentary then.
That's the Dream Team documentary.
I came out now.
When he got everybody excited. You know, if we look towards the future, right? Okay, boom. No, I don't think it should be Cole Popovich. No, absolutely not. I think with the limited amount of resources the Houston Texans have right now in terms of their salary cap, and I 100% expect for Nick Caserio to get some restructuring of contracts going on, to make some room, to get more money, to afford players. I don't know, via trade or free agency. I think this is a perfect opportunity for Houston to say, you know what? That entire room just didn't work last year. And if we want to get the best out of our players, we got to bring the best in for our players. So it has to be outside. Bobby is that's a conversation that I'm speechless, because Sarge, a lot of people want some gone. I think the internal case can be made for Bobby to come back.
Well, John, I'm going to put it like this. And you know that I've said here on numerous occasions, I can make a case for Bobby.
You can make the case for Bobby
to stay.
And I think the case is out front.
I can make the case for Bobby to stay, and I can make the case for Bobby to be gone. And one of the things that I can make a case for him to stay is because, you know, for just as much as we talk about CJ not having his weapons due to injury, you know, losing Nico for 5 games, losing Joe Mixon for 3 games, losing Tank late in the season, but having lost Stephon Diggs,
No Brevin Jordan.
Yeah, Brevin Jordan. And then you lose, you got to shuffle around your offensive line. Well, there's a person who has to call plays for that. Now, this is where I think that on the flip side of it, if I'm in management, if I'm the head coach and I'm in management, I'm looking at it like this. Well, Bobby, we hired you to draw up plays. We hired you to be able to make the adjustments. You can't keep calling the plays as if you have the talent on the field. It is your job to adjust. It is your job. It is Ben McDaniel's job to switch it up and say, let me find out what John Mechie does best. John, you asked me a question the other day, and I'm going to give you an answer right now. You ask about the route concepts, right? You ask about the route concepts. A lot of times these guys are running these routes, John. Go and look and see, hey, if you break off the route here, you're wide open. If you do this, you're open. If you do this, CJ can get the ball out of his hands quicker because now you flash open quicker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go back and look at those plays, John. There's a lot of times where these wide receivers are running the route, not running the route, but not running to say, oh, let me break it off right here. Because T. Higgins will break off a route. Justin Jefferson will break off a route. Jamar Chase will break off a route. Pika Nakua will break off a route. John, these other wide receivers will break off a route. If you're not allowing them to break off a route, then you're doing a disservice not only to yourself, but you're doing a disservice to CJ Stroud. You're doing a disservice to your wide receivers. You're doing a disservice to your offensive linemen. Because the quicker the ball is out of CJ's hands, the quicker they can run the next play. And now these offensive linemen can get to going and getting into a rhythm. But if you say, trust the process, trust the route, trust that the route is going to work, and you got these wide receivers running into coverage.
Same route concepts a lot of times too, depth and all. I would say, just really quick before we close out, in the case for Bobby, but just for the case of the offensive side of the ball altogether, because I don't think the defense had a problem that hindered them too much this year in this context. This is a perfect opportunity for the Houston Texans to create depth that they absolutely need. Throughout training camp last year, there was times where we didn't see Larry Tunsil out there a lot or at all. Titus was in and out. And so we saw other guys out there. Blake Fisher got a lot of reps against the best of the best in the NFL right here on his own team. But they thought that the offensive line had a good enough depth. Okay, you make the case. The talent wasn't there. But the wide receiver unit is where the depth wasn't there. Losing, I think Brevin Jordan hurt this team altogether because of what they asked of him to do and how he can execute it at a high level. Moving forward, they got to get real depth in that wide receiver room. I'm all for bringing John Mechie back, but do I think he's shown enough to be a wide receiver 2 or 3 moving forward? Absolutely not. I'm all for upgrading and getting help in that room to make sure that Nico Collins isn't the end-all, be-all like we've seen the past 2 seasons at the end of the year because the help isn't there. So I think that moving forward, what does it look like? I would say that this is a great opportunity for the Houston Texans to upgrade from their loyalty plan. They love being loyal to the guys that they brought in, but also getting depth in rooms that actually matter. And they did a disservice to their wide receiver unit this year in hindsight.
And I know we can talk about this later on this week, but we've seen offensive coordinators do more with less. I mean, we have, John. There's a lot of times we
those
have
offensive coordinators. How great were their offensive lines?
There's been some times, John, where those offensive lines. Let me put it like this. The Washington Commanders don't have a very good offensive line. They don't, John. Look it up. They don't
pass block. They pass block very well.
Hey, look. The Texans left side do too. The left side does. The guy you want to get rid of is one of the best pass blockers in the game.
Okay.
Talk about it later this week.
Thank y'all for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment to the podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast.
Make sure you follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Star Sports with the Z at the end.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.